Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Laurie Stern. Join me as I invite experts and friends to discuss a range of topics from the factual and practical to the mystical and magical. Consider this your virtual happy hour filled with lively, authentic, and meaningful conversations meant to inform, inspire, and ignite your curiosity. Whether you are very real or super woo, this podcast is just for you. Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Laurie Stern, and I'm here with Traci Hill, who I met originally in a gallery situation, a sound healing, actually, you were offering at my friend Laura Radigan's shop, Soul Shine Collection, which is an amazing, sweet place where we live. And from there, I learned that you were a firefighter. I know that you've retired since. So I immediately connected to your badassery, and I loved that. And you did this wonderful sound healing and cacao ceremony. And then I saw you again at a gallery that she had doing your bioscan. But prior to recording this show, I just had an emotional clearing that Traci offers. And so I just received that. I wrote down notes for that. And so I'm just going to start right in with, after you introduce yourself, of course, right in with my questions. So why don't you take it away and let everybody know who you are and, what you do.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Laurie, for that beautiful introduction. So some people know me as Traci. Some people know me as Samaya, which is my spiritual name. I have been in this spiritual healing world before 2000, but really ramped up when I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2000 and made it a crusade to heal myself naturally, which I feel I've done and haven't been on medication in a long time. And I started the healing journey with two modalities. One was breath work, and the other was this emotional clearing. And I kept it secret for a long time and only did it on myself. But I did it for at least a year, just continually clearing myself. And for your younger listeners, we didn't have podcasts, Spotify, we didn't have all these things. And I honestly don't even know where. I think I was on YouTube, and YouTube was brand new when I found emotional clearing, which is part of Brad Nelson's body code. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard of that. Mm-hmm. But it is basically tapping into your subconscious so that you can release what no longer serves you. And when we get far away from our heart center, we become less of ourselves. So at the time I was diagnosed, I just got on the Chicago Fire Department. And yes, I retired in May. It's been awesome. So I lived very ego-based. I was in the Army a long time ago. I was an athlete. I was just very masculine-based lifestyle. And it's great, but it doesn't serve the whole body. Mm-hmm. So I was diagnosed and I had to completely change my whole world. I didn't do it overnight, but I can say that there were some what felt like overnight changes. And so as I delved more into this subconscious clearing, my life kind of catapulted into the direction it is now.
Oh, I love all of that. I was having a conversation way prior to even seeing you today with a woman with who I'm working as a mentor situation named Terry Crowley. She's amazing. I think you met her actually at the gallery. She's my numerologist, but she's also my energetic coach right now as well for where I'm at in my life. And we were talking about the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And, people feel, if they're not into this work that we do, they're only identified by their gender. And then, of course, the world identifies if you're a softer person, you're so female, or if you're more tough and masculine, firefighter, athlete, I'm an athlete too, we're more male. And what we know is bringing those parts of us, because every human on the planet has both parts, into balance is how we feel better. We feel more aligned when our female and our male are in balance, right? So I love that you said that. And that's amazing that you've got that story. And now that you've said, the body code, now what you were doing with me seems a little more familiar. So just so you guys know, I was sitting down and Traci was asking a series of questions, first from an ancestral side of what emotions might need to be released within my body. And then she transferred to my personal self side. And rapid firing, you were going down a list of categories. And so I kind of want you to talk about, I think you said column A, column B, and then you kind of subcategorized. So my first question would be, obviously you're seeing the columns in your head, and then you're getting intuitive hits on which column the pain or the emotion might be trapped within, and then you're quickly adapting the sub columns, right? So for me, obviously what you were saying and experiencing is going to be different from somebody else, but universally, if you could sort of work the listeners down how this typically is designed, I guess, or you don't want to talk about that because that's your secret sauce and that's totally respectable as well.
No. I'm still happy to share it. In fact, for your listeners and for you too, Laurie, is I actually will teach you how to do this yourself, because I don't gatekeep this. I feel like it's literally just an intuitive gift for me. I was very blessed to come across it, and it's so easy for me. And by the way, I don't have it all memorized. I have a cheat sheet that I look at. So there's 60 different emotions on this sheet. So rather than go through each one and find it, just kind of boxes it off for you so you can pinpoint it quicker. But yes, I do teach this for free. So if someone wants to learn it, serious people only, because I put my heart and soul into teaching it to you. It shouldn't really take long, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But I don't believe in gatekeeping any of this. I learned it for free, so I'm happy to share it. But essentially what's happening is everyone's heard of DNA, of course, and most people think that DNA is really what accounts for what we experience, how our body reacts into this lifetime. But the truth is that DNA is only 5%. So if someone says, oh, cancer runs in my family, it's really only 5%. It's your lifestyle. We're talking about nature versus nurture here, but it's really comes down to epigenetics, and it's being heavily studied right now. And epigenetics is essentially the handing down of emotions generation after generation. It's not the ailment itself. It's the emotion. Emotion is frequency, like everything, and it can be transferred to objects, to people, to plant life, which is why you can, Dr. Masaru Emoto's work on water, it really works. And you can talk to a plant and it really works. And, you can play nice music to a plant, it will grow, because that is all about frequency and vibration transference. So when we talk about a lineage, you can get 62 generations of behind you of an emotion. And when it keeps getting passed down, it gets more ingrained and it grows. So what I like to say is that when I go into your heart wall, which I'll explain that, it is like, I used to say onion, but really I like to say artichoke. So when you think about a whole artichoke, it's got all the leaves. I have no idea. I'm not in control of it, to be honest with you. I have to tap into your subconscious with your permission. I would never do it without. That is something sacred to me. So it's whatever your body is like, you know what? I think we're done with this. We're going to let it go. So it's the outside leaf. You can only pull one leaf really successfully, right? So now we pull the one leaf off. We have a few leaves that we pull off. The idea is to get down to the core of the heart. We all want the heart, right? That's the best part of the artichoke. I love artichokes. You don't, sorry.
You got me. You had me at artichoke. I like onions too, but artichokes are great.
Yes, they are. So we're trying to get to the heart. We're trying to get to the heart, the core. Your heart is trying to speak volumes. It is truly who you are. And when it's covered up by all these emotions that you've been hanging onto unnecessarily, because they haven't been processed, you haven't been taught how to process, you become less and less of who you are, because you are covered by these emotions that now are projected as ego. Your ego gets in the way of seeing who you are. But when you get down to the core and there's nothing left around it, it's raw, it's visible. You can see the core. You can appreciate the core for what it is. And the core is not afraid to be itself. It doesn't need that protection of all the layers of the ego.
Mm-hmm.
So
I just want to interject 1 second here, because I just want to make some connections too. an artichoke, everybody knows what an artichoke looks like. And you're right, like the outer leaves are easy to pull off. I'm from St. Louis. There's this restaurant called Pasta House where I'm from. And growing up, we ordered these stuffed artichokes and it would come with like bread, buttered breadcrumbs and Parmesan cheese. And you'd pick the leaf and you'd scrape it with your teeth. And then you get to the center, but you're not quite there, right? Because what's covering up the heart is really the choking part. And so it's really fascinating when you think about what the work that you're doing and the work that I know that I do, we can release all the obvious layers, right? We can recognize huge limiting beliefs, but when you really whittle down where that belief came from, what's the hardest choke that we have, in my opinion, is our ego. That's the last thing to go because, you get down that road and you think you're getting the answer and then what gets in your way? Oh, you're not good enough to keep going, or that's a thought that you can't have, or all the stuff that our ego says to us. So once you really get cleared out with that choking part, because the ego chokes us off. And I love that you're using that image of the artichoke. And I just wanted to sort of share with you how I was connecting with that. So you go on now.
That's Larry, I haven't heard that. That's awesome. I love it. The choking part. That's fantastic.
The ego is like the stickiest one.
It is.
Right?
And when you get down to that last little bit, it's really hard to let go because you're letting go of what you have.
Your identity, like your whole.
But that's not the real you.
Right. Because we walk around falsely thinking, if we are not our story, who are we? If we are not our job, if we are not, our role in our life, I'm not a mother or a father or a parent or a firefighter or a yoga instructor. Who are we if not those labels? And my work with people, and I expect it's the same with you, is when we help people identify first the labels that they're carrying and then make them understand they're divine beings having this labeled human experience, then we're free to explore that juicy heart center. Yeah,
exactly. And then you attract more of what you really want. It's like my personal story is, I was this athlete. I was getting my master's degree, running 2 marathons, running an adventure race, working 60 hours a week. Like I was the doer. I was the one that people like, oh, she's, like you said, badass. But it wasn't really who I am. I mean, at some point, I guess, yes, but I had no feminine qualities in me. I thought crying was a weakness. So I had to undo, I had to relearn and unprogram myself from all these limiting beliefs and programs that I got just from birth and growing up and past lifetimes. So there's a lot of unprogramming. But what's great about emotional clearing, again, it's coming from your subconscious. So you really don't, I mean, Larry can attest, you don't have to really do anything.
Sat there and took notes.
You just allow. The great thing is that it's subtle. And that's why I call myself a subtle energy alchemist, because we can rip the Band-Aid off, but let me tell you, that's usually not conducive to most people because you're typically have a family, you have a job. And when you rip the Band-Aid off, it disrupts all of it all at once. This is subtle. This is like, you know what? You might lose a couple friends in the next couple months, and then you might gain some new friends, and then your job might not feel the same. Your taste buds will change. It's a little more subtle. And when we can do it subtly, it makes it easier for you to integrate continually in your current reality, even though things will change. You have to change, right? It's like, it was change, but you have to change. So basically what we're doing is releasing these layers, and they're just from things that you've completely forgotten about. You probably wouldn't even remember, and it doesn't matter. That's the great part. It does not matter where they come from, what you were doing. But most people that I encounter for the first time have close to 1 million that have to be released.
Wow.
But the great news is that once you start doing it and you do other things, I always say you can't just do emotional clearing. You have to do all the other work. They will start falling off even faster. So then when you come to me, you lost maybe 10,000. Like, fantastic. Now we, just keep going. And what it's doing is kind of removing the stubborn stuff. It's opening you up to more reality of who you really are. And it's on a vibrational level. So what happens is I removed, I don't know, maybe 10 from you today. And those are gone forever. Those specific ones are gone forever. They're getting transmuted. It's all frequency based, and it will literally shift your DNA so that, and this is my favorite part, is that your family line forward and backward will no longer have that either. So whatever you pass on to your children, it'll be removed from them also. So you doing the work quite literally shifts your children and down work. And anything I remove ancestrally also shifts backward and forward. So it's removed permanently from everybody down the line, whether dead or not even born yet. They will also get the healing energies because we cannot, energy is neither created nor destroyed. It's just changed.
Mm-hmm. I love that image of like the clearing both ways,
It's so beautiful. I love it.
Wow. How did you learn it was like a million, or do you get that intuitive hit that like a person sitting before you has X amount of what you just said? And like you said, sometimes 10,000 go, you said 10 for me. Like, where does that number come from?
I just use muscle testing to ask. So the way I do the session is through muscle testing. I do what's called a sway test, and everybody has the ability. It's just for some people, it's a lot easier. It's very intuitive in the beginning. And for other people, they just have to kind of work at it. But it's a sway test, just a muscle test coming from subconscious. So your subconscious always, shouldn't say always, but 99% of the time will move into a positive direction for truth and a negative direction for not truth.
Right. So I saw you were standing, and then you went down your list of columns. Is it column A? Is it column B? Is it this? Is it this? And then you came up with a word such as blame, right? And then you took a magnet. So I was just listening to an astrology podcast yesterday, Molly McCord, who I love. She's an amazing one out there too. She was talking about the mouth of God. If you know what that is, like right where your skull meets your spine. It's a longer name, a scientific name. Like, I just want to go like that's like not the amygdala, but it's like sounds like that, but like 55 more syllables. But basically, energetically, it's called the mouth of God when we can release stuff in there. So I found it interesting because it seemed to me that's where you were starting the magnet sort of at the base of your skull and then moving it up, right? So talk about why a magnet, what kind of magnet. And then the other thing I wanted to ask too is like sometimes you repeated several times, and sometimes it was only 2 or 3 times. So how does that work also?
Sure. So the magnet is actually, there's several out there. The most common one is the one I have. It's called a Niken. It's from the company Niken, Nike. They're about $70 or $80. And what it is 2 balls encased in a holder that they spin independently of each other, but they rely on each other. So I go from basically the top of the forehead to the base of the spine, to the base of the neck. Now, if I was working on you in person, I would go all the way down to your root chakra or the base of your spine. But obviously, I can't reach that on my own. But this is the governing meridian, is what that is. But it's also our toroidal field, as you know, comes out of the crown of our head. And when it's disrupted, it's not even. So what the magnet is doing during the intention of releasing a specific emotion, it will also realign the toroidal field around our body. Does that answer that?
Yeah, that was cool. And then the number of times you repeated the phrase, take, anxiety, like what is it that you said? I didn't write that down, but I wrote down, why did she say it?
Yeah. It's very repetitive. So when I do ancestral trapped emotions, because they're a lot more ingrained, it's 10 swipes with the magnet of releasing. And I just say, with this magnet, I'm releasing anxiety from Larry's body for ancestral. And then it's 3 for heart wall, and specifically removing it from the heart wall. And then I went to your hip. So removing it specifically from the hip. So you can remove from specific body parts, but the overall theme is the heart wall, because that's what needs to be healed the most on basically everybody.
Okay. Well, and I was going to ask you too, like, how did you identify heart wall? And you just answered the question. And this is a good segue, as these shows often go, because they're unrehearsed. They're just magic as they unfold. And this is one of those times because I'd written down, how does any of this correspond, if at all, to the work that I do, which is chakras, right? And so you just connected that dot for me here, which is a no-brainer, because the heart chakra, for those of you that don't know, is the bridge between the 3 upper and the 3 lower. So it would make sense that you're clearing out the midsection, and from the heart, I'm doing a whole blog post about stuff. And one of it is how to really view through your heart, right? We think we see through our eyes, but if we literally drop that view into our heart, how does that align with our behaviors, our emotions, blah, 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 blah. And so I love that you just connected those dots. But in general, do you, in a longer session, or if you need one, does this correspond or correlate to the chakras? Or is that just a happy coincidence?
It does. I don't know if I want to say directly or indirectly, but as like you said, it's the connector between the upper three worlds and the lower three worlds. And when that can become more in alignment, I mean, there's so many different energetic layers of the heart. So it's not just the chakras, but it's also the etheric heart and it's all the layers, right? And when you look at Heart Math Institute, so the heart is the gateway to help connect, the upper worlds and the lower worlds. And when the heart can function at 100%, then the other three automatically will start to adjust themselves to function a lot more efficiently. But I mean, you can have a kink in the chain at the root chakra and your heart chakra can be fully open. And obviously that will start to mar up the heart chakra again. So depending on your lifestyle will depend on what is going to happen with the rest of the chakras. But the idea really is that as you start to clear your heart chakra and you get below 5,000 left, you're living a totally different lifestyle. Life is different, especially when you get under 1,000. You're just a completely different person. You really honor your body more. You live in more love, peace, and joy. So really all the other chakras are going to be in line. So it all coincides together, but yet it doesn't need to because it flows as it should. As you know, it just kind of starts to become one big entity in itself.
Okay. That's great. I love that you answered it all that way. So like I identify, you'd asked me before we started, is there anything going on? Or maybe you asked me something about, I can't remember now if you asked about my hip or I told you about my hip. I didn't tell you which one, which doesn't matter. But do you typically want people to come to you and say, I'm having, an area of tension or discomfort or I have an injury in an area? Does that help you? Or does that sort of sometimes get in the way of the work that you would do otherwise not knowing?
It's not that I don't ask. I don't like to know because I like to go in sessions kind of just, unprejudiced. This is one of these things that's super, super intuitive for me. Like you'll notice I kind of hit right in the right box of where I'm supposed to be. And I don't know how that happens. It's just intuitive for me. But if someone's having like a really specific issue that they really need to work on, like I've had people come to me with like, I'm having a major money block and we worked on that. But again, it's not just this work. It has to be all the work, right? We can't just rely on one thing. So I will help remove some kind of energetic block that they have, but there might be other energetic blocks involved. But having some clarity around it helps a lot. So most people just come to me because it's like they just feel better after the session. It's like they just feel calmer and more at peace and surrounded with like their own personal compassion for themselves. So it's just like, just another tool. So I don't know if they answer your question, but
No, it does. It does. And it actually, it's no surprise too, energetic wellness is such a huge, wonderful pot. And we each as practitioners pull from, sometimes like I describe it as we just have one ladle and that's all we ever use. Some of us, it sounds like you and I connect in this way. We've got a bunch of different spoons and utensils with which we can grab from this energetic pot. And one of the ones that I use and practice is Reiki. And just like you described, I might have a client who presents with problems with their knee. But as we know, if you're a Reiki practitioner, we just channel the energy coming through us. We don't do anything, but have the intention for the greatest healing for our client. And so in that way, my intention is, of course, to heal what needs to be healed that they've said. But we know that there's magic that happens in other parts of the body just because that's what happens. And so it sounds like that's what happens with you. Like, yeah, you didn't start by asking me, now that I remember, you just sort of paused and said, do you have something going on here or there? And I'm like, well, kind of, but it's really here. And so, yeah, so that makes sense to me too. And I just love how whatever we call ourselves also, we are able to provide a service as it comes to us for the greatest healing of the people that are seeking our help, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I wanted to connect to because when we were talking about ego and how that's the hardest layer to release because we walk around identifying by our labels. And when you were describing all the ways in which you described yourself, athlete, firefighter, doer, similar, right? So well before I had my first child, I had miscarried a set of twins, which ultimately put me on bed rest for the remainder of any pregnancy I would have. And people who know me, I come from an aerobics and an athletic background. And you tell someone like me that I have to be on bed rest for pretty much 9 months, people wigged out on my behalf, right? But well before I even became a yoga instructor, well before I ever stepped on a yoga mat, and this was when I know I was already getting intuitive hits, although I didn't know it at the time, I was very calm and very clear-minded that this was such a small portion of my life for this much of my life. And so if I had to not do aerobics and not take a shower more than every 3 days and be on bed rest and cook this baby, right? That's of course what I'm going to do. And so right away, I recognized, how am I identifying myself? First I went through the grief of, oh, no one's going to see me waddling down the street and wanting to pet my belly. I felt like a house plant. My husband was in residency at the time and he was overwhelmed with that schedule. And I was basically a house plant for a while. Like I was fed, I was watered, but I just had to cook, right? And when I really thought about all the ways in which I identified myself, I had to leave my job. I had to stop exercising. I had to stop teaching exercise. And it just seemed a lot easier than I thought it would be, right? And it sounds like that was part of your path too. Like, we run around being these Energizer Bunny doer, and then universe says, well, we're going to stop you here. And now let's see what you do, right? And that was your illness that came up and that put you on this path.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't ask for it, but we can look back and say, oh, I get it now. I can understand. And you say, thank you for doing that.
Sounds like you had a much more gracious lesson. Mine was not quite as gracious. Like I had a lot of speed.
I had fits. Believe me.
Was in denial.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I always tell people part of it, I'm an Aries and I am tried and true Aries. And I had to learn, like my stubbornness saved me, but now I also have to learn to kind of not be so stubborn at this point in my life. Like it helped, the stubbornness of me not wanting to go on medication really helped me. But now I don't need it. Like I'm not going to the firehouse and needing to, pop up my chest. And it doesn't matter to me anymore. I don't need to prove myself to anybody anymore. I don't need to, because that's what I was constantly doing, right? I was constantly proving myself because I was taught that as a young girl, like you can't do these things. You're a girl. I was literally told that many times.
Right.
And now I just don't care. Yeah, I had to kind of just let ego step aside. But it took me a few years after diagnosis to really, I'm going to say 5 years at least, to just be like, all right, your attitude is just not working here.
That's funny. In this conversation with Terry I was having just this morning, I had said the same words, because I'm podcasting and not everybody's going to like the subject matter or the way I sound or whatever it is. And I said, I really don't care. And it's not to say I don't care about the opinions of other people. The difference now is, my mother who passed away, she used to say, if one person calls you, an ass, it doesn't make you an ass. If 2 people call you an ass, it doesn't make you an ass. If 3 people call you an ass, you better start looking for a tail, right? And so in that way, if enough people had the same opinion or friendly critique, I would consider it, of course, because I'm human. But the difference now is, and I think this is what you're saying too, is we do care very much for people. And we do care about our integrity and our authenticity and how we want to be interpreted and received. But it's not going to make me stop shining my light anymore because of those people. Whereas before, when I was younger, if somebody said, oh, why are you so loud? Or why are such a cut up? Or, why are you such a show off or this or that? Or why don't you wear sleeves? And what people don't know is I don't wear sleeves because I pit out my shirts. Okay. Thank God I have decent looking arms, but it's my comfort level. I'm not trying to show off. That's your problem if you think that I am. I'm just being comfortable, right? And so if I were then to put on sleeves because other people are uncomfortable with how I look, what does that do for me except dim my light? And so we do care, but we care enough for ourselves now at this point in our lives where we don't feel the need to alter ourselves to fit somebody else's opinion to make them more comfortable. I would say to them, come work with me so I can make you more comfortable, and go work with Traci so she can make you more comfortable, right?
100%. Yep. I was always conforming to everybody else. I was that chameleon. I was like, I could be even people from high school where I was like, you fit in with everybody. I mean, one,
Yep.
I'm super nice, but I was so afraid to not have friends, and I just fit in with everybody and just did what everyone wanted me to do because I didn't know who I was and I wasn't comfortable with who I was. And I cared way too much what other people thought of me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just became somebody else. And I was
Right.
like, who's this person?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Gemini, right? I'm a Gemini, and I had very many different groups of friends. And I connect with what you're saying. I was really insecure in high school. And I think people seeing me now would be like, what are you talking about? Like when you were pom pom squad and choir, athlete, blah, blah. But you're right. Like I just wanted to fit in like anybody. And the way that I changed myself depending on the group with which I was sitting at the lunch table or in the classroom. I would like to say now, sitting here with you, the intuitive hit I'm getting is I think that primed us for how we do get along now and really see the divinity in any group or any person and then connect with that, not because we're changing ourselves, but because we recognize that soul connection from us to them, right? And so like as these little girls who are insecure trying to fit in, again, thank you, Spirit. Thank you. Because like we were getting primed to do this work. How lucky.
Yeah.
All that shit we went through.
Yeah. Well, at first, I went through a really bad divorce and I had some hardships. And, in the beginning you want to blame, but now I'm like, oh my God, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for everything I had to grow through. And I like to say grow through and not go through, because it was just, I had to learn from all the messages the universe kept sending me.
Right.
You're not on the right path. You're not on your right path. Now I am. So it's all beautiful, blissful life.
Yeah.
When
you're even your, like the posts that I see you're making are way more informational from your heart space than just like, hey, I'm doing a sound healing, right? So I love seeing like that transformation in you. Facebook doesn't give me everything. Like I still don't see people's posts I want to see. I have to go look for them. So I don't understand. That aside, I wanted to ask you, because you kind of sprinkled it into your intro. Did you say what's your Samara?
Samaya.
Samaya, how did that come to you? When did that come to you? Is it something you chose or was given to you?
Okay. Well, I won't go into the full story, but I just never resonated with my name for a couple of reasons. Nobody can get my name right either, which is kind of funny. So no matter what walk of life I go through, it was like Teresa or Stacy or, it was, people have a hard time because I don't look like my name, I think is one, but two, I just never resonated with it. So when I found there's a society called the Kabbalarian Society, it's a group of people. It's called Kabbalarian with a K. It's a whole group of people. And when you decide, and you have to pay for this, but when you decide you want to change your name, they actually take your full name, your birthday, your time of birth, like all the astrological things and all this stuff together. And they actually converge. It takes them about 5 days, and they come up with a list of about 20 to 30 first names and 20 to 30 last names. And you just kind of take your time and look through it and try, silently try each name out for yourself and what you like about it, because all the names they pick align with your highest self, both in like financially and health wise, like all the different things. And then when you choose one, and Samaya is one, they will help you actually transition your name legally over, which I'm not ready to do just yet. But yeah, so that's how. And Samaya, I believe, means bringer of light. And I was like, oh, that's really perfect.
Right. That's amazing. I know of somebody else in our community that changed her name from what she was called to, I believe, Samara, which is interesting. I'll have to write her a message and see if she just did the same thing you did. I have a sister who goes by her middle name. To whittle that story down, in my opinion, her first name, her first birth name, has so many negative connotations for her, and her middle name just felt better. And that's who she is. Like, I don't know her as her other name, really. So that's interesting. And I had this dream. I was explaining this on a show previously. I don't know in what order it will come out from here, but it was this vivid dream, like a very lucid dream. And in this dream, I was given this name, Adea. Like, this woman looked at me in the face and said, Adea, it's about time you got here, or it's about time you woke up, or several messages at once, all meaning the same thing. Like, I finally see you showing up as you. It's about time. And I went and I looked at the name, the meaning of that name. And in several different languages, it all means the same thing. It's like, light of God or light from God and all this other stuff. It's Sanskrit, it's Hebrew, it's Hindu, everything. And I was like, wow. So I'm curious to know if I put my name into this society, if they'll come up with this name for me.
That would be amazing. Oh my gosh. And you would have to change it.
I don't know. So, yeah. And now it's time for Joy on the Fives. So, Traci Hill, in this moment, what is bringing you joy?
You know what? I actually experience joy almost all day, because joy comes from within, happiness comes from without. So I have learned I know my core values. I know who I am at a deep level. I'm super secure with who I am. I'm not perfect by any means, but I love myself. And it took me a long time to get to this space. So I literally experience joy in everything. The work I do, the food I eat, my kids, just where I'm at, I literally will find joy in everything. And I guess it's kind of like gratitude, but I mean, I'll go for a walk with my husband and I'm like dancing down the street. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, you know me. And it's just, I'm silly. Yeah. And I literally just seek out joy in every moment that I can.
Well, it sounds like, you've practiced that and cultivated it. The idea of the segment is to inspire people, listening in the moment that they hear it, also to pause for themselves and to see what's bringing them joy. Because I want to envision a world where we're reminded through our day, like the news, weather, and traffic, to pause for joy. And it sounds like you're already doing that, right? And this quote came to me this morning in my conversation again. And the idea is this path is not a switch, it's a practice. Right. So it takes practice. And for some people, they want the switch. They want that quick, tell me now, tell me how to do it. I'm guilty of that for sure. And when we sit with it and we strip off the onion layers or the artichoke leaves, and we learn how to cultivate deeper breaths, internal work, and finding joy, then it just creates more of that stuff. So brava to you that you're already doing it. I love that. And I wanted to ask, just to jump off this little path, because when I met you, you were doing the sound healing. And so do you still do that too as part of like the work that you do with clients, or incorporated it into this emotional work as well?
I do not do that with clients, only because most of my clients are virtual. I don't need to see my clients in person. So I have clients from kind of all over. And most people just are really happy being, they're most comfortable in their own home. So that just makes it a lot easier. So I do sound and cacao generally more in the fall and the winter and spring. Cacao is not really received in the summer very well. So yeah, I just kind of go wherever I'm invited to do the sound healing and cacao ceremonies.
That's awesome. Every time I hear that word cacao, I think of like a bird that goes, cacao, cacao. It makes me giggle because I'm silly, but I can't unhear it now. And I laugh every time I see the word. I say, it's cacao. So I can't undo that. I'm so sorry. Now it's probably infected you as well, and several others out there. I apologize. And I don't. So you did the sound healing and you incorporated like rain sticks and bells and drums. And, it's funny because sound for me is so sacred. Like I sing and I resonate with sound. And you already touched on the transformative way sound literally can heal. And so in some of these sound sessions, I find I go a little squirrel with like, I'm so into the tone that I'm hearing. It's resonating in a part of my body. And then my personal thing is I like the rain sound, but for whatever reason, some tones of bells, and you're not the only person that does this. It happens to me all of the time. My brain starts competing with, now what's that sound? And do I like that sound? And oh, I liked that other one better. And then I go back and forth in my head versus just being in there. And there was a woman who does sound healing. She started humming, but she was off key. And I was like, sister, you got to stop that because I don't know why you're bothering. Like, what are you trying to do? And I went all indignant in my head. I'm like, this is just not working for me. So I have to find a way to really settle into the sound that's being offered without letting my ego and my mind take over. Maybe that's my work next.
It's funny.
Has that ever happened with you?
Yeah, all the time. So it's hard for me to attend unless there's a couple that I go to that are, I know their sequence, like I know how they do theirs. So now I can rest knowing that, okay, I don't have to worry about, oh, what's coming next? Oh, I like, because I'm the same way. What was that? And a lot of times I would open my eyes, like, what's that sound? Like, I've never heard that one. Like, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. I'm like,
I'm so glad I'm not alone.
I would analyze, like, oh, come on, stop it. Just
well,
driving.
I'll have to get that info from you. You know, and you're connecting too with yoga. There's a lot of students who prefer like a set sequence, like Ashtanga, because they know what to expect. That's how they find their breath. That's how they practice. And for those of us like I am, like I like that, but I also just like a free flow, the way I teach, the way I like to take a class, because I already know how to breathe, right? And it's just like you were saying, like you already find joy. You don't need to practice that. You don't need to be reminded of it. But for people that don't necessarily how to understand how to connect their breath with their bodies, starting with or staying with a set sequence is so transformative for that kind of human. And so again, it's just, I love how there's just not a one-stop shop or one clear path for everybody. And we're meant to pick and choose, like from the supermarket. I like a peach today, I want a watermelon, you know? And so that's why I love that there's so many of us out there doing what we are doing. I just want to say thank you for offering your healing to me prior to the session. And I will drink my water today and for the rest of the week. And I wanted you to just remind people again how to find you and then the offer that you're providing my listeners today.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So you can find me at consciousevolution.coach. I'm also on Facebook and TikTok as the same. You can pretty much find anything there. And then I'm offering a free inner voice scan for first-time users or clients. And what that is, you talk for 10 seconds into a device, and this can be done virtually. And then the device will basically scan your body for frequencies and let you know what emotions are out of balance and then what physical issues are coming up as being out of balance, all based on 10 seconds of you speaking. And then you will get a 7-page report and you will get a customized sound therapy from that.
Wow. From 10 seconds, you get a 7-page report. That's amazing. When you just said voice scan, I was thinking right away, I went to Richie Sambora or Joe Walsh with that mouth harp thing, that they used. Living on a prayer or like,
yeah.
Life's been good to me so far. All right. Thank you so much. Everything that you just said will be in the show notes below, of course. And I appreciate all of you out there in podcast land for listening today and for connecting with myself or Traci or anybody that brings you greater joy, healing. And obviously, this podcast is for entertainment and information and inspiration. And for anybody who's truly suffering from any mental health or physical illness, please go see your professionals as well. And I thank you so much for being with me today.